My name is Nico Varela. I weld steel for a harbor contractor on the Staten Island side, mostly patch jobs, broken railings, corroded ramps, cracked shell plating on vessels nobody wants to spend real money on anymore. For the last 9 days, the city has been pretending nothing is fully wrong. Just delays, temporary closures, a hospital incident in Queens, a police action in Brooklyn, a sanitation staffing problem in Lower Manhattan. Official people keep standing in front of microphones and talking in that flat, careful way that means the truth is being shaved down before it reaches the rest of us. At the yard, we hear more than that. Tug crews talk. Fuel dock guys talk. Deckhands talk. Everyone has one ugly story from a cousin, a brother, a woman at an urgent care clinic, a man on a subway platform who bit a cop and kept moving after being dropped. I keep hearing the same detail from different mouths. The sick are not staying put, and the dead are not staying dead for long. By noon, I stop pretending I am just listening for gossip. I walk out to an old ferry tied off at the scrap berth, a wide, blunt city boat named the Oriole, stripped of seats on one deck. Paint faded, engines still serviceable because nobody has finished gutting her. I stand under the loading deck with my hood up and stinger in hand, and I start welding shut every lower door that nobody needs if a crowd ever gets aboard. I do not make a speech about it. I do not tell the yard boss I am preparing for the end of New York. I work my shift, then stay late and work my own plan into the ferry one seam at a time. Lower service doors, sealed. Machinery room ladder access from the car deck, sealed except for one hatch I can dog from above. Passenger stairwells to the lowest deck, plated over with scrap steel and angle iron. Crew quarters on the upper level stay open. Same for the wheelhouse, galley, and one side corridor that gives me a clean path from the helm to the engine room access. I leave emergency escape points because I am not stupid. If fire gets me, I need a way out. But I turn the vessel into a place that cannot be flooded with bodies in one rush. The first night I bring aboard bottled water, a camp stove, canned soup, batteries, extension cords, work lights, my welding kit, a toolbox, and the old revolver my father kept in a lockbox before he died. I do not own much worth saving, so loading the ferry takes under 2 hours. I go back to my apartment in Port Richmond after midnight, lie on the mattress fully dressed, and hear sirens moving toward the expressway without long breaks between them. The next morning, the yard feels wrong even before anyone says a word. 2 men do not show up. One calls in and says his wife tore open her own brother at Elmhurst. Another sends a text to the foreman saying he is taking his kids north and not coming back. The foreman curses him out in the group chat, then vanishes into his office and spends an hour on the phone with somebody from the city who keeps hanging up. Around 10, I drive to a restaurant supply place in New Jersey, using the Bayonne Bridge while traffic is still moving. I buy dry food, rice, beans, powdered milk, paper goods, bleach tabs, trash bags, rope, a hand truck, and 3 blue plastic drums that I fill later at the yard hose bib. I hit a marine supply place after that and burn most of my savings on filters, oil, sealant, spare belts, flares, gloves, and a portable VHF. By the time I get back, the news is running helicopter shots over Queens, and the anchors are speaking over a banner that keeps changing from public health alert to civil emergency to temporary movement restrictions in several boroughs. Nobody says outbreak. Nobody says infected. Nobody says the streets are full of people attacking strangers with their teeth. I unload in silence. A man from the scrap crew watches me rolling water drums up the ferry ramp and asks if I am camping aboard. I tell him my apartment smells from a sewage backup. He nods because nobody wants the longer answer. I spend the rest of that day building sleeping space in a former crew bunk room with a narrow cot, blankets, a fan, and blackout tape over the portholes. I rig a gravity line from one of the water drums to a sink in the galley. I inventory food. I test the emergency generator. I find the batteries on one bank are weak, so I pull a pair from a dead forklift in the yard and get them charging. The main engines are old medium-speed diesels that were supposed to be removed after sale, but the paperwork stalled and the engines stayed. One starter has been touchy for months. I pull the access covers, check oil, top off coolant, and get both systems to a point where I trust them enough to move under my own power if I have to. I am a welder, not a licensed captain, but I have spent years on trials, repositioning jobs, tug hookups, and yard transfers. I know enough to get a vessel off a berth and into open water without driving her into a bridge. Late in the afternoon, the city orders schools closed for 48 hours. A man on the radio says the public should remain calm and shelter in place. 10 minutes later, I look across the Kilvan Cull and see traffic on the expressway freezing into a hard line all the way toward Newark. I do one more run to my apartment before dark. I take clothes, a photo of my mother, cash, a heavy jacket, work boots, antibiotics left over from dental surgery, and the little radio I use during blackouts. The building stairwell smells of bleach and old food. Somebody on the second floor is crying behind a door with 3 extra locks on it. Outside, a delivery van sits at an angle against 2 parked cars with both front doors open and nobody near it. I carry the last bags down fast and hear a woman yelling from another block over. The words do not carry clean, only the shape of panic, then breaking glass. I leave the television on in the apartment when I walk out, more from habit than reason, and I know I am not coming back. By the time I reach the yard again, the foreman is gone, and the front gate is hanging open with one track half off its rollers. I back my truck to the ferry, throw everything aboard, disconnect shore power, and stand on the vehicle deck listening to the wind push wrappers across the concrete. The yard should have forklift alarms, air tools, metal dragging, men swearing at each other. Instead, it has gulls, distant sirens, and one engine somewhere on the street revving too hard without moving. Night comes down in pieces. First, the yard office loses power. Then the streetlights beyond the fence blink off. Then the radio says all non-essential marine operations in New York Harbor are suspended until further notice. I go up to the wheelhouse, turn on the dimmest chart lights, and call my younger sister in Astoria for the 4th time. It goes straight to voicemail again. I leave another message telling her to get off the street, fill every container with water, and head for a roof only if the building is compromised. I stop there because I do not want her hearing my voice crack into uselessness. A few minutes later, my phone floods with emergency alerts that talk around the truth so hard they become useless. Avoid affected persons, remain indoors, await law enforcement direction, travel restrictions pending. I look toward Bayonne and see orange light rising beyond low warehouses. Something large is burning. A helicopter crosses low over the harbor, then another. One goes north. One turns and disappears behind Jersey City. I sit in the wheelhouse, hands flat on the console, and make the decision that changes everything. If I stay tied up here, someone stronger, faster, or more desperate takes the ferry from me by sunrise. If I push off now, I have distance. Distance gives me options. I start the port engine first. It coughs, shudders, throws a ribbon of smoke, then catches and settles into a heavy idle that runs through the deck under my boots. The starboard engine takes longer. I have to go below, crack a fitting, bleed air, swear at it, climb back up, hit the starter again, wait, and try once more. When it finally turns over, I can hear shouting from somewhere near the yard gate. I do not go looking. I slip the remaining mooring lines, use the thrusters carefully, and ease the Oriole away from the berth with more prayer than skill. The hull drifts free. For a second, she hangs broadside to the current, and the wind starts taking her bow. I correct late, overdo it, then settle her again and bring the ferry out into the channel at dead slow. The navigation lights work. Radar is weak but alive. The radio is full of broken voices. Police marine units calling for backup. A tug reporting persons in the water near Hoboken. Somebody yelling about a landing at Pier 11 being overrun. Then a burst of static so hard it wipes the rest clean. I keep the bow down toward Upper New York Bay and give myself a wide berth from everything, even empty water, because one bad move into a buoy or shoal ends the whole idea before dawn. From the harbor, the city still looks intact in shape, which makes the details worse. The skyline stands there, full and sharp. Bridges are still standing. Towers are still lit in patches. Ferries still move, but not in any order I understand. One commuter boat runs fast toward Manhattan with half its lights off. Another sits near Battery Park without moving while smaller craft circle it. On the Brooklyn side, I see headlights packed into the BQE so tight the road looks paved in white points. A cluster of fires burns deeper inland, small from this distance but too many for accidents. I take the Oriole west of Governor's Island and slow almost to a stop in the darker water under the lee of the island. I do not anchor yet. I do not want the chain rattling out and announcing me. I kill one engine, then the other, and listen. The city gives me a strange mix of sounds. A ship horn from the Narrows. Short, automatic bursts that could be construction nailers if I were willing to lie to myself. Glass breaking, and one long human scream that rises, cuts off, then leaves nothing behind it. I stay in the wheelhouse until the windows turn black and the skyline starts dropping sections of light, one building at a time. By morning, the lies are over, even if the language is not. Every station that still broadcasts is using words such as mass casualty event, hostile infected persons, catastrophic service failure, no hospital intake capacity. I make coffee on the camp stove, burn my tongue because I am moving too fast, and begin the first day of actually living aboard. I secure loose gear. I check fuel levels. I fill buckets from the washdown line while pressure still holds. The ferry tanks are not full, but I have enough diesel for several days of careful movement and several weeks of generator use if I stay disciplined. Freshwater is tighter. I can stretch what I brought if I wash with rags, cook simple, and stop pretending I am still on land. Around 9, I bring the engines online and let the ferry drift farther north, along the west side of Manhattan, keeping to the Jersey side of the channel where traffic is thinner. Smoke is rising from lower Manhattan now. Not a wall of smoke. Separate columns from separate blocks. I pass a police launch with 4 officers aboard. One has a rifle across his chest. He sees me, raises a hand to hail, then gets a call on his shoulder radio and turns away without finishing the motion. A minute later, I pass the first body I have seen on the water, face down in a life vest near a piling with one arm moving in the chop. I do not stop to check whether it is current or muscle or something worse. I open the throttles and keep going. Near the Hudson Slips at Midtown, I see a service launch spinning slowly against its own line, stern line snapped, bow line still holding. A woman is on the roof waving an orange jacket. Two other shapes are inside the cabin, not moving in any useful way. I circle once at a distance and watch. She keeps waving. The shapes inside keep throwing themselves at the windows in short, ugly bursts. I bring the ferry around with the current, line up the starboard side, and use the height of the hull to block her from the open river. I do not let the ferry touch the launch hard, because one bad bump can pin the smaller boat under my plates. I toss a line. She misses once, gets it the second time, makes it fast around a rail, and I winch her close enough for the gap to become jumpable. She comes over carrying a backpack and a wrench in one hand. I pull her through the side door and lock it behind us. She is in grease-stained coveralls with a Port Authority patch half torn off. There is dried blood on one sleeve that is not hers. She tells me her name is Lena Ortiz, and that the two men in the launch were alive when she untied from the dock at dawn. One died from a neck wound. The other tried to help him. Both changed before she cleared Chelsea. That is the whole conversation for several minutes, because the launch is now banging uselessly against the ferry, and I have to cut it loose before it drags or attracts half the river. Lena turns out to be the first good decision I make after leaving the yard. She worked maintenance on terminal power systems and backup generators. She knows vessel wiring enough to be dangerous in the useful way. She also understands the first rule without needing me to say it twice. No one comes aboard without being watched, checked, and isolated for a period. We set that rule before noon, along with 3 more. No unnecessary lights after dark. No docking at any crowded pier. No radio answers unless we need something specific. No rescue unless the risk is clear and manageable. That last rule sits between us in silence after we say it, because both of us know what it means. We eat canned peaches in the galley, while the ferry idles off the Jersey side. She asks where I got the boat. I tell her the truth. She gives one short laugh and says I stole better than most people loot. Then she gets to work. By mid-afternoon, she has improved the battery charging setup, revived 2 dead outlets in the crew corridor, and helped me rig blackout curtains in the wheelhouse. We run binocular checks on the shoreline every 20 minutes. Hoboken piers are crowded with stranded people. Midtown ferry slips are worse. On the Brooklyn side, I can see a stream of civilians moving along the waterfront until the stream breaks apart near a terminal and turns into a churn of running, falling, and bodies closing around other bodies. We do not narrate it for each other. We simply mark that shoreline off the list. The second night teaches us what being visible on the water really means. We are drifting slow off the statue side, dark except for red instrument glow in the wheelhouse, when Lena taps the glass and points aft. A center console fishing boat is coming up without running lights. I count 3 men. One is on the bow, low and ready. Another has a spotlight he keeps off until the last second. The beam hits our stern and sweeps up the deck. I already have the port engine turning. Lena runs down to the aft passage and slams the exterior gate shut. The small boat angles closer, and a man yells that his child is sick and he needs help. His voice has that hard edge of rehearsal in it. I do not answer. I swing the ferry into a slow turn and let the wash build. The man with the light keeps shouting. Another voice tells me to cut engines and throw a line. Instead, I bring both screws up just enough to send a rough boil across our wake. The fishing boat drops back, tries to come again on the quarter, and gets shoved off by our stern wave. One of the men stands and raises something long. I hit the ferry horn, At that range, it tears the dark open. The man drops back into the cockpit. The small boat veers away, vanishes behind us, then reappears farther out, still tracking. Lena reaches the wheelhouse with the revolver in both hands. I tell her hold until they touch steel. They never do. After 10 minutes, they peel off toward the Brooklyn side. We stay underway for another 3 hours because neither of us trusts the dark anymore. On the third morning, we go looking for diesel. Not because we are empty, because waiting until empty gets people killed. Lena knows a private fuel berth on the Jersey side near a maintenance yard, with above-ground tanks and a pump manifold that might still work without a main office. We cross early while the light is gray and the wind is carrying smoke east. The yard gate is open, no trucks move. 2 men are on the concrete near the hose reels, one face down, one sitting against a bollard with his head twisted too far and his hands picking at the air in slow, repetitive motions. We back off and study the place for a full 10 minutes. No movement from the office windows, no boats at the dock, no crowd coming. I bring the ferry in with the starboard side too, slow enough that Lena can step onto the pier with a line and make fast. I stay at the controls until she gives me a thumb up. Then we move fast. She checks the pump house. I lay out hose. The sitting man gets up halfway through and drifts toward us with one shoe missing. I take a steel pipe from the deck locker, walk him down before he reaches the gangway, and drag him clear without looking at his face for longer than needed. We pump just under 1,000 gallons before power cuts. While we are disconnecting, 3 civilians appear at the far gate and start yelling for us to wait. One is carrying a child. Another has blood on his shirt. I freeze for half a second too long. Lena sees it, grabs my arm, and says no in a voice flat enough to carry more than panic. We cast off while they run toward the pier. One jumps the first set of barriers and falls. The woman with the child does not stop for him. I back the ferry hard enough to pull the line from Lena's hands, catch it on the second pass, and bring her aboard. We leave with more fuel and one more thing we cannot fix. That afternoon, the city starts breaking in a more organized way. Helicopters are still up, but fewer. Police-marine traffic becomes scattered instead of steady. The broadcasts telling people where to report go silent one after another. We see a rush of small boats leaving marinas around Manhattan, many of them badly handled, half loaded with coolers and blankets, and no extra fuel in sight. Several make for the Jersey side. Several run south toward the Narrows. One overloaded cabin cruiser takes a wake wrong off Ellis Island and rolls until the rail is under. People go into the water. We are close enough to see hands. Lena looks at me. I already have the ferry turning. Then 2 of the people in the water latch onto a third and start dragging him under in that same broken feeding motion we have both seen on shore. I stop the turn. I hate myself for stopping. I hate the neatness of the rule and the mess inside it. We stay in place long enough to confirm there is nobody isolated from the cluster. Nobody we can throw to without bringing the whole knot alongside. Then we move on. Lena goes below without speaking. I stay at the helm and keep the bow pointed north, because if I start revisiting every refusal in my head, I put us on a pier and get us all killed before sunset. We pick up Aaron Pike at dusk near a disabled crew boat drifting off Hoboken. He is alone, waving a flashlight through a rag wrapped over the lens. That detail saves his life because it tells me he understands not to broadcast everything to the river. He used to work deck operations on a commuter route out of Weehawken and knows the harbor well. His left forearm is wrapped in a clean bandage from a prop wash cut, not a bite. He is pale, tired, and 1 bad hour from doing something reckless. We bring him aboard under the same rules: jacket off, sleeves up, turn around, open the bag, isolation in the forward crew lounge until morning. He accepts all of it without a fight. His first request is water. His second is not for us to waste antibiotics on him because the cut is shallow. That earns trust faster than pleading would. In the night, we hear his radio, still clipped to his belt, throwing out fractured dispatches from agencies that no longer have enough boats or men to make their instructions matter. Somebody is trying to organize a river corridor for medical evacuation. Somebody else is warning all civilian craft away from Harlem River because vessels are grounded there and gunfire is active on both banks. Aaron sleeps in a chair with a life vest still on, mouth open, one hand around a flashlight that has gone dim. In the wheelhouse, Lena says he is either solid or very good at acting solid. I tell her that on the water, those are close cousins until proven otherwise. Morning proves him useful. Aaron knows the ferry controls better than I do and does not pretend otherwise. He walks me through a few things I had been babying wrong: rudder lag, engine response delay, how to set a turn sooner on a hull this broad, how to read the side drift when wind hits the upper structure. He also points out 2 unsecured deck lockers that would have spilled half their contents in hard weather. By noon, he has the anchor windlass checked, 2 fire hoses laid out for quick use, and a safer boarding process marked with chalk in the starboard passage. The ferry starts feeling less stolen and more crude. We move in loops around the harbor for another day and a half, never staying still long enough to become easy. We watch Lower Manhattan lose most of its nighttime light. We watch the Staten Island side stay dark longer, then flare in sudden isolated fires around strip malls and apartment blocks. We hear one final citywide announcement on FM telling all residents to avoid contact with infected individuals and await federal support. Nobody on the boat laughs. By that point, the federal support is a rumor with rotor blades. Aaron suggests we start thinking farther north. He says the harbor is becoming a trap. Too many eyes, too many boats, too many people who know water enough to come after a vessel with lights and freeboard. Lena agrees. I look once more toward the skyline, toward the burrows holding my sister somewhere inside them, and then I turn the Oriole toward the Hudson because staying close to grief does not bring anyone back. Running north changes the story, but not the danger. The river narrows. Current matters more. Debris matters more. We pass under the George Washington Bridge at slow speed because there are stalled vehicles packed across both levels and smoke rolling off the Manhattan side where something is burning near the ramps. On the Jersey shoreline, there are camps already. Tarps, shopping carts, fires in barrels, people watching the water too carefully. North of the bridge, we see less organized movement and more isolated trouble. A sailboat sits half across a marina entrance with its headsail flogging itself to strips. A tug is tied crooked to a bulkhead with nobody visible on deck. We stop twice for freshwater, once at a riverside maintenance yard where the hose bib still runs, once at a park dock where we fill containers from a restroom line while Aaron stands watch with a flare gun and Lena checks every nearby doorway. I go ashore only when I must. Land feels unstable now, not in a poetic sense, in a practical sense. Every window can hide a person. Every parked car can block retreat. Every quiet block can turn loud before a line is cast off. The ferry gives me sight lines and steel between me and the mess. Shore gives me ankles, blind corners, and no clean path back if a gate jams or a line snags. I come off each supply stop dirtier and more convinced that water is the only reason we are still functioning. On the 6th day north of the city, we get caught in weather that would have been manageable before everything else fell apart. Now it feels bigger because there is nobody to call, nowhere staffed to duck into, no tow coming if we lose a shaft. Wind comes down the river hard from the north and turns the surface into steep gray chop that hits broad on our hull. Rain slams the windows. Visibility drops to a few boat lengths. Aaron takes the wheel while I go below with Lena to secure loose gear and check a vibration we do not like from the starboard side. Water is slapping somewhere it should not. We trace it to a dogged door on the vehicle deck that had not seated clean after the last fuel stop. I wrench it shut, add a bar through the handle, and come back up soaked through. The ferry is working against the current with both engines loaded higher than I want. One piece of floating timber comes out of the rain and clips our port quarter. Not enough to breach, enough to remind me the river has started making its own minefield out of trash, dock lumber, coolers, and broken pieces of everyone's failed escape. We finally find Lee behind a broad bend and anchor in deeper water off a wooded stretch where no houses show lights. None of us sleep much. Every gust shifts the chain. Every metal knock from below sounds human until checked. At 2 a.m, Aaron spots another vessel on radar moving without lights, slow and uncertain. We stay blacked out and silent until it passes. The next day gives us our first real shore fight. We need medicine. Aaron's arm is red around the cut. Not bad yet, but red enough to matter. Lena knows of a small marina store near Yonkers that kept first aid stock, bottled propane, canned food, and boat parts behind steel shutters. We approach at dawn from mid-river and study the place through binoculars. 2 cars in the lot. One body near the office door. No obvious motion. I put the ferry close enough for a short boarding ladder, not so close that we cannot back clear. Lena and I go ashore while Aaron keeps engines warm. Inside the store, the shelves are half stripped but usable. We get antibiotics, antiseptic, painkillers, line, hooks, 2 hand pumps, and a stack of charts in case electronics quit. Then voices come from the fuel dock. 3 men and 1 woman with backpacks and 1 shotgun between them. Not infected, alert, hungry, and locked on the ferry. The woman calls out first, asks if we are taking passengers. I tell her no. One of the men says there is room for discussion. Another says he only needs a ride upriver for his wife. He is not wearing a wedding ring and he never looks at the woman standing next to him. I tell them step back from the pier. The man with the shotgun smiles in a way that settles nothing. He keeps walking. Aaron sees it from the wheelhouse and gives 1 blast of the horn. That buys me 1 second. I use it to slam the store door shut, yank Lena behind a rack, and wait for the first shot. It punches glass somewhere above us. Aaron brings the ferry off the dock enough to widen the gap. Lena and I run out the side, use a maintenance ladder, and get aboard with bags swinging against our legs. The shotgun fires again from the pier. Pellets hit steel, loud and useless. Aaron backs us into the channel without haste, because haste on a hull this size is how people die stupidly. We talk about rescues more after that, because refusing strangers with guns is easy compared with refusing strangers who truly need help. The river keeps throwing both at us. We see a family on a dock waving a white towel beside 2 suitcases and a stroller. We see a man alone on a mooring float with a broken ankle and no boat in sight. We see 6 people in matching private security jackets trying to flag us down from a marina full of expensive yachts. The problem is never room. The problem is trust, infection, and chain reaction. 1 sick person aboard can take the boat. One liar can take the boat. One desperate group can watch us rescue a harmless old man and learn we are soft enough to approach. We settle into a rule harsher than the first one. We only consider people with obvious maritime value or immediate, isolated, verifiable need. That sounds cold even in my own head. It is also why the Oriole stays ours. On the 8th evening, we bend the rule once. A small inflatable comes around a point with a single man paddling using half a broken oar. He is wearing an engineer's coverall from a riverside power station I know by sight. He does not ask for a ride. He asks for a crescent wrench because his intake screen is jammed and his generator keeps overheating. Lena gives me a look. I ask where his boat is. He points around the point where a work skiff sits half hidden under branches. That is enough. We toss him a wrench on a line. He thanks us, paddles away, and never comes closer. Half an hour later, a short burst of light comes from behind the point, a generator coming back online. That feels better than most of the other choices. Aaron's infection scare turns out to be only bad inflammation, but it forces us into medical routine. Twice a day, we check every scrape and cut. We disinfect all of it. We keep one isolated cabin ready with restraints improvised from cargo straps. Not because we want to use them, because pretending the need will not come is childish. On the 9th day, the rule gets tested anyway. We are anchored in a wide, quiet section above Terrytown when we hear banging from below after midnight. Aaron and I move together while Lena covers the upper passage. The sound is coming from one of the lower service corridors I welded shut before leaving Staten Island. For 5 ugly seconds, I think somebody got aboard during the last supply run and hid in the dead spaces. Then the banging comes again, and I realize it is outside the hull. Something caught between a fender and the steel plating, slamming with the wash. We go out with flashlights hooded and find a body in a cheap orange life vest wedged against the side, one hand trapped in the rope of a hanging tire. The face is turned away. The arm jerks when the hull rocks. Aaron mutters one word and stops. I cut the rope. The body slides into the black water and vanishes under the stern. Nobody says much after that. We go back inside, make instant coffee, and sit in the galley listening to the anchor chain creak, while dawn works slowly into the windows. The river keeps bringing the city to us in pieces whether we ask for it or not. On the 11th day, we hear a working Coast Guard voice for the first time in almost 40 hours. Not a recording. A live operator. Civilian vessels are advised to avoid New York Harbor and Lower Hudson due to ongoing hostile incidents, quarantine enforcement, navigation hazards, and limited rescue capacity. That last part lands clean because it is honest. Limited rescue capacity. At least one person out there has stopped lying for a living. Aaron says if the lower river is cut, traffic north will increase. He is right. By evening, we count 5 small craft moving upriver in loose succession, all overloaded. One has 8 people aboard a boat meant for 4. Another is towing a jet ski with no rider on it. 2 pass us without slowing. The third alters course toward us and begins asking over loudspeaker if we have fuel to trade. I answer no. The voice says he can offer cash, jewelry, and a generator. I say no again. Then the loudspeaker says something else. Not a threat, not exactly. More a test. The kind of line a man uses to see whether the thing in front of him has a spine. Aaron takes the mic from me and says our deck guns are already loaded, which is a lie large enough to earn silence. The boat passes. Lena laughs once from sheer disbelief. Aaron shrugs and says people respect imaginary hardware more than real manners. He is right about that too. By then we have started keeping a maintenance log, watch rotations, fuel ledger, water use, and route notes. The ferry is becoming home through routine, which is the least romantic sentence in the world, and the truest. We make our worst docking decision on the 13th day because exhaustion makes bad ideas sound balanced. A marine supply warehouse near Haverstraw has a long pier, visible rooftop tanks, and a forklift parked by the loading door. We need more oil, more filters, and decent rope. The shoreline around it looks empty. Too empty, which should have told me enough. I bring the Oriole in anyway while the morning fog is still lifting. The first 10 minutes go smooth. Lena gets the warehouse side door open with a pry bar. Aaron starts transferring cases. I am on the pier checking bollard wear when I hear an outboard engine kick from behind a line of old pilings upriver. Then another. 3 skiffs come around together, all low in the water, all fast. Men aboard. 1 woman aboard the lead boat with binoculars and a rifle. They do not yell first. They know yelling wastes surprise. Aaron is already moving. He throws the last crate onto the deck and starts casting off without waiting for me. Lena runs out of the warehouse carrying a 5-gallon oil pail and drops it to free her hands for the line. I grab the stern spring, strip it off the bollard, and jump the narrowing gap just before the hull pulls away. The first skiff reaches the pier in seconds. 2 men leap onto the concrete and run for the edge with hooks. 1 throws. The hook scrapes our side and falls short. The second throws better. It catches the rail, bites, and goes taut. I cut that line with the torch I had hanging from my belt, because sometimes the old habits earn their keep. The rifle cracks once from the skiff. The round smacks the wheelhouse frame above Aaron's shoulder. Then Lena gets one of the fire hoses open. The ferry's old fire main still holds pressure better than most of the city. Lena swings the nozzle across the lead skiff and hits the helmsman square in the chest. The stream knocks him backward over his own bench. The boat yaws, clips the second skiff, and both lose the clean angle they needed. Aaron puts full astern on one engine and ahead on the other, pivoting us off the pier while I drag loose line clear of the prop wash. The woman with the rifle drops flat in her skiff and keeps firing from behind the console, but she is shooting at steel and distance now. 1 round takes a window, another punches through a chart drawer. None of them stop us. The men on the pier try a second hook and miss because the gap is already too wide. We slide into mid-channel with the hose still blasting until the skiffs pull off. They could have kept after us, but a broad ferry at speed throws enough confused water to make small boats think harder about bravery. Aaron keeps us moving for nearly 2 hours before he says a word. When he finally does, he only says no more easy piers. Nobody argues. That night, we move lockers, reinforce 2 more exterior doors, and rig a crude barrier across the upper passenger deck using old bench frames and chain. After that, I stop thinking of borders as something possible and start treating them as something scheduled. A week later, the river traffic thins again. This time because fewer people are trying and more have already failed. Smoke columns inland become part of the horizon. The radio becomes quieter, then stranger. We hear church broadcasts, a man reading names into dead air, a sheriff from somewhere upriver telling people not to approach his barricades after sunset, and one woman who plays the same recorded piano piece every hour followed by a call for insulin. Lena tracks frequencies in a spiral notebook. Aaron fishes when the water allows it, mostly catfish and striped bass when luck turns our way. I keep the ferry alive with grease, patches, and stubbornness. We learn which compartments stay dry, which vents draw engine smell, which deck plates bang under swell, which corners of the crew quarters hold the least heat during the day. Domestic details take over pieces of the panic. Socks dry on handrails. Coffee grounds get rationed. Tools get their own places. We stop jumping at every metal thud because a vessel this size talks to itself all day. The calm does not make us sloppy. It just makes the work continuous instead of frantic. Then, late one evening, we hear a boy's voice on a handheld radio calling Marine Channel 16 from near Croton Point. He says his father is dead, his outboard is out of fuel, and he can see a large ferry northbound. We are the only ferry northbound. Aaron reaches for the mic. Lena says, "Wait." The boy calls again, voice steady but thin. He gives his location twice, same each time, which suggests truth or very good coaching. We spend 10 minutes debating, and every minute feels ugly because somewhere out there a child is either real or bait, and both possibilities say rotten things about the world. We go, but we go on our terms. No close approach until visual confirmation. No boarding until inspection. I keep the ferry a full boat length off the point and use binoculars. The skiff is real. The boy is real. So is the man slumped in the stern under a tarp. No second boat. No hidden men on shore. No movement in the brush near the launch ramp. Aaron hails the skiff first and tells the boy to keep both hands visible. He does. The kid cannot be more than 14. His father has a chest wound from 2 days earlier, according to the boy. Maybe a fall on broken dock hardware. Maybe something else. The tarp rises once in a short twitch. That settles the rest. We cannot bring both aboard. We lower a line with a fuel can, bottled water, crackers, and a hand pump. Aaron talks the boy through tying the can into his tank, while I keep the ferry angled to leave fast. The boy asks whether he can come with us. Silence holds for a beat too long. Then Lena steps to the rail and tells him there is a marina cove 3 miles north with locked gates and fresh water in the maintenance shed if the line has not frozen. She gives directions twice. The boy nods, starts the outboard, and pushes away without arguing. He does not wave. I do not either. We watch him disappear around the point under weak evening light. Afterward, the galley stays quiet. Nobody claims we did the right thing. Nobody claims we did the wrong thing. We only know we kept the rule and gave him a chance. Out here, that counts for more than it would have a month earlier. The move to our final anchorage happens because the ferry needs a break from constant motion, and because all 3 of us are tired of living in decision mode every minute. North of the city, past the worst traffic and far enough from the big corridors, we find an abandoned industrial riverfront with a half-collapsed loading pier, a sheltered basin, and a freshwater stream feeding down from a wooded cut behind old warehouses. The basin is deep enough for the Oriole if I enter slow and favor starboard. There are no visible residents, no active marina, and no road access better than a broken service lane choked with weeds and stalled trucks. We spend a full day scouting from the water, another day checking by foot with the ferry held off under Aaron's watch. On shore, we find an old maintenance building with rusted lockers, a chain-link fence mostly still standing, and a pump house whose roof leaks but walls hold. More important, we find signs that people passed through weeks earlier and did not stay. Dead fire ring, torn backpack, empty food tins, no recent footprints in the mud after rain. That is good enough. I bring the ferry into the basin on a gray morning with Lena on the bow and Aaron calling distance. We rig long lines to old bollards, set backup anchors, and hang extra tires on the side. When the engines finally go quiet and stay quiet, The silence feels earned instead of dangerous. Making the basin livable takes work that keeps us from sinking into our own heads. We run a filtered fill line from the stream to storage tanks on shore, then ferry that water aboard in sealed cans until we trust the setup. We establish a shore team of 2 and a boat watch of 1. We clear a path from pier to building. We move supplies nobody can risk losing off the main passenger deck and into deeper compartments. Aaron overhauls the starboard fuel filters properly. Lena gets a small solar array scavenged from an RV lot, working well enough to keep radios and flashlights topped off without touching the generator every day. I weld steel screens over 2 more side entries and reinforce a ladder gate with plate cut from an old loading ramp. At night, we keep 1 dim red light in the wheelhouse and nothing else visible from river level. We fish. We set crab traps. We make 1 cautious run south for flour, oil, and more medicine, then decide 1 successful run is enough for a while. Days begin to hold shape again. Morning maintenance, water, food, perimeter check, radio scan, repairs, watch, sleep. The city is still downriver, still broken, still large enough in my mind to eat a whole evening if I let it. I keep busy because busy is cleaner than memory. Lena catches me one afternoon, staring south too long from the upper deck. She does not tell me to stop. She only hands me a wrench and points at a hinge that needs attention. That is one of the reasons she is still here. The basin almost gets taken from us 1 month after I push off from Staten Island. 3 boats come in near sunset. Not rushing, not hiding, moving with the calm of people who have done this before. 1 aluminum work skiff, 1 center console, 1 narrow john boat riding low with gear, 5 men total, 1 woman at the tiller of the skiff. Binoculars, hooks, long poles. No children, no injured, no reason to be in a dead basin by accident. We go to plan without shouting. Aaron stays in the wheelhouse with engines ready. Lena kills the shore lantern and opens the valve on the fire main. I go to the upper deck with the loudhailer and tell the boats to turn out immediately because the basin is fouled with submerged steel and no safe landing exists. That part is true. The lead skiff keeps coming. A man on the bow says they only want water and a place to tie for 1 night. Behind him, another man is already measuring the lines to our stern. I repeat the order. He smiles and tells me nobody owns the river. Then the work skiff opens up and charges for our quarter, trying to get close before dark finishes. Aaron throws the port engine ahead. The ferry surges against her lines just enough to swing the stern and ruin the skiff's angle. Lena hits them with the hose the instant they enter range. The stream catches the bowman in the knees and folds him backward. The woman at the tiller fights the wheel. The second boat tries to peel toward the pier. That is why I rigged the barrier chain across it 2 weeks earlier. Their hook catches chain, not rail. I drop the far end release. The chain falls, and their own momentum carries them into a nest of broken pilings on the inside edge of the basin. Wood cracks. Somebody screams. The third boat turns immediately and heads back for open river because the smartest person in their group was apparently driving that one. The fight lasts under 4 minutes. It feels much longer while it is happening and much shorter after. One man gets onto the collapsed pier before deciding the jump to our deck is wider than his courage. Another fires twice from the skiff at our upper windows. 1 round sparks off steel. The other vanishes into old glass. I fire the revolver once into the air over their bow, not to hit, only to change their math. It works. Between the hose, the swinging stern, the jammed second boat, and the lack of an easy boarding point, the group loses momentum. River raiders are still people. They are dangerous, not magical. Remove the easy angle and many of them remember fear. The lead skiff backs out first. The damaged boat claws free after leaving one man limping on the pier. He scrambles back aboard with help from the woman, and all three craft pull out of the basin cursing us until distance swallows the words. We do not chase. We do not celebrate. Aaron keeps engines up for another hour in case they circle back with friends. Lena and I check every line, every door, every window, every possible damage point before full dark. Then we sit in the galley with cold canned beans because nobody has energy to cook. Aaron says the basin is burned now, and we need to be ready to leave. He is right in principle. He is wrong in timing. We stay another 6 days, double watches, no shore fires, no unnecessary movement. Nobody returns. During those 6 days, I finally get one message from my sister, delayed in the network enough that it reaches me a month late. It is a voice clip, 23 seconds, sent from Astoria the morning after I left the yard. She says she is moving with neighbors toward a school gym because police are directing people there. She sounds annoyed more than scared, which hurts in its own way because it tells me how early it still was. She says she got my messages and I am probably overreacting, but she is taking water anyway just to shut me up. Then she laughs once and says, "Call when you calm down." The clip ends with other voices nearby and a door slamming. I listen to it 4 times in the wheelhouse with the radio off. There is nothing to do with a message that old except absorb it. No grave to visit. No body to identify. No final scene to place in a box. Only a woman's voice caught in the last ordinary hour she probably had. I do not break anything. I do not yell. I take the message file, copy it to 2 different drives, and go down to the engine room because the starboard coolant hose needs replacing and my hands need work more than my head needs room. That night, Lena leaves a mug of coffee near my bunk without trying to speak about family or hope or any of the useless words people reach for when there is nothing to fix. Aaron takes first watch without being asked. On a boat, respect often shows up disguised as chores. By the time cold starts creeping into the mornings, the ferry is no longer a temporary hiding place. It is a vessel with a system, a crew, layered defenses, and a future that exists in plain, practical terms. We are not waiting for the city to recover next week. We are not waiting for helicopters. We are not waiting for officials to regain control of boroughs they lost in days. We keep charts of coves, supply points, hazards, and radio contacts. We catch rain off awnings. We preserve fish. We dry clothes over lines in the old passenger deck and use seat frames for storage racks. I strip one abandoned warehouse office for insulation panels and line the coldest crew corridor. Lena fixes a compact diesel heater from spare parts that should never have worked together but somehow do. Aaron starts talking about taking the Oriole farther north before ice becomes a problem, maybe to a wider section of river with better current and fewer banks close enough for rifle fire. I argue for staying until one more supply circuit is complete. We go back and forth over charts, tide notes, and fuel math until the conversation becomes ordinary disagreement instead of end-of-world pressure. That might be the strangest part of all this. The return of ordinary disagreement. Not panic, not running, not sirens. A man pointing at a chart and saying current on this bend is ugly in winter, while another man says the dock there has steel dolphins and fresh water. That is what survival starts turning into once you stop expecting rescue. I still think about the first morning in the yard. Sparks falling from my torch under the ferry's belly, the smell of hot steel, The stupid feeling that I was maybe embarrassing myself by preparing too early. I was not early. The city was late. It was late admitting hospitals were failing. Late admitting police lines could not hold. Late admitting the bridges and tunnels were feeding panic instead of controlling it. Late admitting that a body on a sidewalk had become a hazard without needing a weapon. By the time the truth reached screens, the only people who gained anything were the ones already moving. I do not tell myself I was a genius. I had luck, access, and a job that put me near a vessel nobody valued enough to guard. I also had a habit of listening when working men spoke in low voices. That helped more than any official statement. When I welded the lower doors shut, I was not building a fortress from some grand plan. I was buying time. Every plate I burned in bought a few more seconds against a rush. Every drum I filled bought a few more meals. Every choice to pull away from a pier bought another dawn. Enough bought dawns become a life, even an ugly one. Some evenings we still take the ferry out of the basin and let her move under us, just enough to keep systems exercised and to remind ourselves she is not a floating warehouse. She is our road, our wall, our fallback, and the reason any stranger watching from shore has to make a serious choice before trying us. From the upper deck, with the river flat and the sun gone behind the ridge, I can look south and know the city is still there beyond the bends, carrying its millions of rooms, its dead terminals, its towers, its blocked roads, its neighborhoods I no longer have names for, because naming them starts bringing back too much. Manhattan, Brooklyn, Queens, the Bronx, Staten Island. From the water, they were once a map I worked around every week. Now they are the place I escaped by maybe half a day and one stolen ferry. That is the margin. Not destiny. Not heroism. Half a day, and steel, and diesel, and refusing the wrong people. I live on the water because the land turned into a series of bad gambles faster than anyone in charge would admit. I welded a ferry shut before the outbreak reached New York in full because the harbor was already telling the truth. The city caught up later. By then the Oriole was moving, the lower doors were sealed, and I was watching the skyline from a distance that kept me alive.